SA Explained with me, Nqaba Mabece, joined by my compatriot, my comrade, my fellow member of the Madlanga Roundtable, Pule Letshwiti-Jones, here to do a proper analysis of the week that was before Justice Madlanga and fellow commissioners at the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry, specifically focusing in on former IDAC head, Advocate Andrea Johnson, and the subsequent testimony that would rebut a lot of what she said. It is important for us to do this precisely because there are just so many loopholes, at least from the evidence that came after her, that are reflected in her initial testimony. We do know one thing as well. Before the ad hoc committee in Parliament, she told a lot of untruths, frankly, lies, that would be uncovered before Madlanga, only to later learn that at Madlanga even, she still continued with misleading the commissioners precisely because of the evidence that would be given under oath still by Advocate Ramasamy, who was also one of the investigators at IDAC. Somebody who was there for all of the testimony of these respective names that I've already highlighted is none other than PLJ, Pule Letshwiti-Jones. Good to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start with Ms. Johnson. 6 days under the stand, the longest of any of the witnesses, first of all, and 6 days is forever. Interrupted by the weekend, but 6 straight days. On day 5, obviously, she grew very weary and fatigued, and she even asked to be excused.
I was about to say.
Remember? Yeah.
Saying that she needs to go clear her office, given the fact that she had resigned, and President Cyril Ramaphosa had accepted her resignation, essentially calling an end to her era over at IDAC. And what seemingly started as a good legacy was marred by a lot of wrongdoing, discrepancies, and unlawful processes that were embarked upon by Johnson and other senior investigators in IDAC, such as Chief Investigator Dylan Perumal, who's, by the way, been suspended, right? So we heard from witnesses who made these allegations against these senior investigators, including Brian Badiachi as well, and Sanil Balanchan, who we know was accused and a case opened against him for allegedly extorting a Pakistani national in the Eastern Cape as well. So that's, in 6 days, a picture painted about IDAC's legacy from about 2021 to date.
Let's talk about the charges against members of the PKTT that have now subsequently been withdrawn. Because at least the position that has been taken by Advocate Motibi, who's the National Director of Public Prosecutions, and he was watching the very same testimony that was being offered by Ms. Johnson. As soon as she stepped down, he withdrew those charges. In fact, it happened before she stood down. It was mid-testimony. I'm not so sure. I think it was Wednesday last week or Thursday last week No, it was Wednesday. It was on Wednesday because that was her last day. So he withdrew those charges against members of the PKTT and instructed that if anything changes, it must be with my express written permission. That on its own is a serious indictment on IDAC.
I think it was on a Thursday when that happened. We were still at the commission. But we had gotten wind through our sources that straight after Andrea had completed her testimony, she was going to get suspended. Given the serious allegations leveled against her leadership and what has been unraveled, like you're saying, at the Madlanga Commission, right? And essentially that letter, Motibi is quite scathing in saying that if IDAC is to even contemplate to try and enroll this matter, they should actually speak to him first before they even try to entertain that idea of bringing back this matter. He's provisionally withdrawn the charges against Lieutenant General Dumisani Khumalo, Madondo, Lekalakala, Mukwele, and others. But the lawyers representing Mukwele, Khumalo are saying, no, we want complete withdrawal. I think the MPA shouldn't try and save face in saying provisional withdrawal to try and save IDAC's integrity. The jig is up. The damage has been done. And our clients have been subjected to immense public scrutiny, and their integrity and reputation has been tarnished completely due to IDAC's attack on them and following poor and weak, unlawful processes. So that's where we are. The 23rd of September will be quite interesting because the state has to go there. As embarrassing as it may look, read on the record that they're provisionally withdrawing these charges. And we'll hear the counter arguments from the defense. But there is an idea of also trying to see if they could file a civil lawsuit as well against the institution for what their clients have been subjected to.
I think that would be a very strong case that they can mount against IDAC, because
Easy millions.
the personal injuries here, from their good names, their reputations, how their careers in the future more likely will suffer. And even then now, the test or the burden of proof is not beyond a reasonable doubt.
Let me tell you something, Nqaba, again, through
It's
our
not
source.
that.
Yeah. And it's internally, this has damaged the morale of some investigators who are saying, we have been carrying out sensitive investigations, but that will now come into question.
Correct.
Given the backlash that IDAC is facing right now and what has been unearthed at the commission. We have been told through our sources that there were about 3 senior officials who resigned from IDAC a few days ago, right? As a result of what has been happening at the commission. An investigator I usually use as a source told me that he was also on the brink of resigning, given what is happening. What could have been a save for IDAC now was the briefing by Mamloko, the Justice Minister, saying that the cleanup operation has begun, that there's going to be severe, or not severe, but rather proper vetting processes, lifestyle audits that must be conducted, and all of that as well. I don't know how people felt about the statement that no one internally inside IDAC could possibly be an acting head, as it seems as though that caliber isn't there for now. So we want to know who is going to be the acting, I mean, given what the mess Andrea Johnson has left, the person,
together with the top brass who have subsequently been suspended. She wasn't acting in isolation to everybody around her. And it needed collaborators. And of course, now we know who at least the main culprits are. They've all been suspended. But the hollowing out of an institution like that is probably where my biggest concern lies. You don't have a head. You don't have the senior members. The morale, as you say, is low. There have been subsequent resignations. The question is, who wants to be a prosecutor that is linked to IDAC? It's no longer one of the things that you can say proudly, I work at and or for IDAC. Yeah. That's the biggest problem, because now it has created this massive deficit and eaten into, if not eroded totally, the integrity, not just of IDAC, but specifically the National Prosecuting Authority that itself has been under the hammer for exactly the sorts of things that we're talking about.
So you wouldn't want a Scorpions 2.0, right? In terms of disbandment, you need a leader who's quite credible, knows what they're doing, and has past experience to turn around the morale in.
There are many in the country.
Unit as well. Take, for instance, it's like a soccer team, right? If a coach has been coaching this football club for quite some time, or managing this football club for quite some time, and what we're seeing is he's not getting the results or reaching the objectives set out by the board, you need someone who's going to come up with a clear turnaround strategy, which will not be effective immediately, but someone who will implement expeditious plans and objectives to try and turn around and fix the identity of brand IDAC, which for me is quite important as well. And to speak to what you're saying, it's clear that they were in cahoots. I mean, Perumal, Johnson, all of them. And for Deal Adams, what seemingly looked like he was being used like a pawn is now starting to becoming quite confusing, because he's now open charges against Perumal to say Perumal is disclosing information that's part of a live docket before the Madlanga Commission and should be charged for defeating the ends of justice. You just don't know what game he's playing.
He's been given enough rope, and he is doing what anybody with enough rope does. At some point, it's going to be around your neck, and very slowly you're going to start to hang. He's obviously aware of the fact that he's running out of runway. He keeps acting all hardcore and mentioning and speaking in brave terms. The gloves are off. Bring on Dumisani Kumalo. What happened from the time he said that to now? Nothing. And the reason why he has to maintain a particular persona is because he's doing his own calculations in his head, I would imagine. He's speaking in the same way and tone with regard to going to make an appearance before Justice Madlanga and company. He is going to find out pretty quickly, once now he is questioned by people who are, one, aware of the enterprise and how it has been rolling, who have got a lot of loose ends to tie up, given the testimonies of A, B, C, and D, that he is the one who can speak to. And very quickly he will find out that the technicalities that attach to the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry are a far cry from what he did not experience but should have experienced from Parliament's ad hoc committee. That's at least the case for Fidel Adams. But you know what, Pule, just before I forget, what for me is a concern, and I'm ever so grateful to the Justice Minister for raising that and just bringing us back to the main thing and making the main thing, was when she addressed this issue, this narrative that was starting to pick up some momentum, regrettable as it was.
I see what you're saying, yeah.
That this is an Indian cabal thing and focusing that the Indians have created this mess at IDAC. I'm glad she first of all took us into her confidence with regard to the statistics of members of IDAC and the NPA at large. But also, you know, this is exactly the problem we have with race classifications and generalization. That's exactly what apartheid was all about.
And coding.
That's
right?
exactly what colonialism was all about.
Yeah.
Just looking at a people and classifying them with one brush stroke. It is damaging. This is going to sound like the most cop-out statement, but it is true. There's no way, from what I know, from many Indian persons that I know, we've got a fantastic colleague in Desenthia. He could not conceivably be seen the way that Andrea Johnson and company are
100%.
seen, precisely because of his work ethic, his professionalism, and his commitment to the rule of law in South Africa by how he reports his cases. I have been employed by many people, and I'm not taking away, and perhaps I should say this, I'm not taking away the experience of anybody under these persons or elsewhere who are minded to say this is who they are. But I am just glad that the Minister of Justice, using the platform and her position and title to address an issue which should not be seen as an issue or made an issue.
I concur, and I don't know where that came from. I think it was a term that was formulated and cooked on social media and began gaining momentum as well in classifying these group of investigators as to whether they are the Indian cabal who are just hiring Indians at IDAC, which is not the case, as like you've mentioned with the stats that have been provided by the minister as well. I think what we see is that, again, takes us back to the reference made by Nqaba when he came to the commission on the 17th of September 2025 to say, yes, there are factions in IDAC. There are those who are fighting the good fight, and there are those who are fighting to protect sponsored agendas, right? Who are protecting interest as well. And it's very important that for IDAC be cleaned up and this narrative also, be rebutted, because you cannot be running an institution based on what you're saying, it being dubbed as an Indian cabal or whatever it is, whatever it may be. It can't be that way.
It shouldn't be that way. Can we talk about Advocate Ramasamy when she came through and offering necessary contexts and nuances to how the IDAC office runs? Because at a particular time when Andrea Johnson specifically was still under oath and offering her testimony, I either had to accept what she said as normal operations within IDAC or fill in blanks on my own, because her response to things that were potentially tricky was, I cannot take it further. I note what you say. I hear you. And then at some point she started pleading the fifth equivalent. I'm not going to incriminate myself. There were a lot of loopholes that Advocate Ramasamy came and sealed for us and had the deleterious impact on the credibility, which was already precarious on Andrea Johnson. How important was it because you were inside? And perhaps even the stuff that didn't go to air.
So she was paying attention to that testimony of Andrea Johnson. You pick it up in how she corroborates what she saw during a testimony and reflects that down on a statement. That would then give birth to a Rule 3 notice, which the commission will issue out to say, okay, fine, based on the new allegations, the disclosure that has been made by Ramasamy, we will then ask Johnson to come back to the commission to respond to these allegations. Now, what we understand here is that Johnson was in cahoots with Dylan Perumal. They called the shots. In fact, Ramasamy then goes to say she's a big fat liar and that she's a flip-flop knee-jerker, meaning she'll say one thing now and say something else after having spoken to Perumal as well. And essentially how they wanted to, sponsor the attacks on these senior SAPS officers using or rather, let me say, abusing the Section 28 process, which then compels IDAC to call you to come answer, and what you say cannot be used against you in a court of law, right? Circumventing the Section 27 protocol. That
the willingness to abuse the process of law.
It was malicious, in my view. It was malicious, it was brazen, and unlawful as well, unprocedural. It was not in their mandate. I mean, if you're looking into vetting processes of the SAPS, what business does IDAC have there? Like the commissioners have referenced, right? What business does IDAC have in looking into HR matters? PFMA as well. Just how far could they have gone and stopped? So what we understand now is that Ramasamy is basically saying we were controlled, we were made to push agendas, and this came in the form of a project called Project Diversion. And essentially, the mandate of that project was to target senior SAPS
The
officials.
name itself is ironic, isn't it? Diversion.
I mean, Mabece, when asked about it, he was asked, what do you think about that name? He's like, he didn't even care. He's like, look, that's a name that was given, so we run with it. What that shows you is that there was fear of insubordination. These investigators feared not pushing back. They knew that once they did that, they would be victimized. I mean, Advocate Rapesu speaks about how Dylan Perumal didn't want he didn't want to sign any document, right? That would potentially get him on the red, right? He was very careful, but always wanted to take credit when IDAC was doing well. It shows you about the abuse of power and how there were dictatorial decisions that were being taken by Perumal and backed up by Johnson as well.
Can you imagine being in an office setup like that?
It's very toxic, man.
It's clearly very toxic, but also using the power of their positions to run agenda that are completely and totally at variance with the mandate of their being in that IDAC and operating as those officers within the National Prosecutorial Authority, and creating the sort of damage they did, not just within the institution, but outside, leaving in tatters careers that many spent years building. Mokwele, for instance, I mentioned this at the roundtable a couple of weeks ago. I didn't know who she was. And thank goodness there was a Sandile Khumalo who would take us through her profile to offer a counter-narrative to what otherwise had been persisting because of the bogus charges that she was facing and having to answer to in court because of the work at IDAC. The same is true for Masemola. This is your nation's top cop, that you are willing to do this. The same is true for Khumalo and all the others, because there are those who are in power who simply abuse it, totally abuse their power. And it happens in the workplace, more commonplace than perhaps we might even want to appreciate. In the public sector, in the private sector, people just throw their weight around because of their titles.
Can you imagine if there was no Madlanga Commission, Mukwele would probably still be facing those charges right now, and possibly successfully prosecuted based on
who knows,
false
exactly.
statements
Who knows?
obtained and all of that, right? And God forbid that didn't happen. You know,
No.
What we saw was it's pure evil.
It is bloody evil. It is bloody
to try and embarrass someone and arrest them and even ensure that they are detained and prosecuted and sentenced.
And when that is put to you,
It's a
you
stark
don't have
reminder
an
of where we
explanation.
come from as a country, in fact.
Well, it's also a reminder of how far we still need to go
Yeah.
if we are dealing with these issues at such a macro level. Can we talk about the fact that, I mean, she concedes in that voice note or call that was recorded by Ramasamy. She concedes her inability to articulate the basic law that she was relying upon to pursue these charges. It was certainly put to her, and she was at her wit's end to justify legally. Understanding her mandate in terms of Section 7 of the National Prosecuting NPA Act,
Yes.
she struggled to articulate the charges that were preferred against Masemola on the reading of Section 38 of the Public Finance Management Act. Pure operational issues in terms of how she attributed what was supposed to have been done by Masemola, which in reading the law was actually that of the institution. And then Section 155, 156, and 157 of the Criminal Procedure Act, those acting in concert, and the joinder in terms of 157, she couldn't articulate what she had done consistently with the provisions upon which she relied to establish those 4 charges against Masemola.
In fact, it seems as though there was an internal report that said checks and balances had been made by Masemola. How that was disregarded, I really don't know. And obviously, this speaks to encroaching on processes which are operational matters subject of SAPS, just like the Mukwele matter as well, which we heard was, perhaps an HR matter.
It absolutely
that could have been dealt with internally. What's even said about the Mukwele issue is that she was, 1, overqualified, but 2, went through a due process. A panel was constituted by Lieutenant General Dumisani Khumalo. It was approved. Signing off was, guess who? Suspended National Deputy Commissioner for Crime Detection, Shadrack Sibiya. Right? Approved by SAPS and overall. So it means if you're going to come for Khumalo, come for Sibiya as well and others who approved this panel. But Mukwele was even willing to take a pay cut because she was overqualified. So it speaks to the dedication of someone who's not only overqualified for the position, but wanting to serve, right, with dignity for their country.
And then that appointment is characterized as token.
Yes, which is a statement that she ultimately had to withdraw because I think Commissioner Khumalo put it to her to say.
But she has said it. She has said it. Withdrawn, yes, but she has said it.
And why I think she's not remorseful is that phone call recording where she slanders the commission. She says, she questions the chairperson's facial reaction. She then, even worse, says that Ramasamy must leave the country. How do you tell that to a witness who has to adduce evidence that will help the commission on this fact-finding mission?
She has poor judgment, clearly. I mean, just poor judgment. We can get into the character aspects of it, but her judgment just clearly, from her time on the stand and clearly subsequently, is poor.
Now, I heard from, my spooks.
You've got plenty of those.
They're progressing in this investigation.
Which one?
Against Johnson.
Okay.
Obviously, this coming from what could be seen as defeating the ends of justice. Remember, she gave confidential information to her gorgeous, her dearest, and someone she missed as well.
Don't be spicy.
And that docket pertained to a case opened by Brigadier Leonora Petla, alleging that Khan had harassed her and assaulted her. That voice clip was also played at the commission. And why Andrea did that was to prepare Khan to write his warning statement. And that matter as well. So that could be defeating. And that's one element that is currently under investigation. You have Public Interest SA who's opened a case against her to say she's not, well, now, she wasn't then, they were saying they were contending she's not fit to hold office. But essentially they're saying that she has brought the institution to disrepute and about the appointment of her husband, Andrea Johnson, which they say should be questioned as well. Right? So that's where we currently are with this whole matter. And we know that the investigation against Masemola is now under review, as per statements made by the
That was going to be my last
prosecution.
engagement with you. That surely, it cannot end any other how on the evidence that has been ventilated before Madlanga. It cannot end any other how other than for that particular matter to follow the fate of the other members of the PKTT. It has to be withdrawn.
It has to be withdrawn. And given what the commission has unraveled, clearly it's not in line with legal prescripts as well. But you should connect the dots. So you have Andrea Johnson giving this docket to Khan. You have Brian Padiachi coming to the commission saying Khan is a witness in one of the cases, right? That's been under investigation. We don't know which case it is, but you can infer and make up your own mind what case it could be. Then you have Khan, who is pretty much in the mix of things. But Fadil Adams then claims he has information that he got from crime intelligence snuck under his parliamentary door. Claims it's from someone from crime intelligence, right? Then what follows that is the aggressive push to try and, without any doubt, ensure these top officers are prosecuted by falsifying statements, commissioning statements of a case opened here in Gauteng, and you go all the way to Cape Town to do it. that should tell you that there was someone behind this who was doing all of this, what could potentially be for the capturing of crime intelligence. Because once you capture crime intelligence, you've captured the heartbeat of the SAPS operation, right? And we know that position that Khumalo holds is one which is very sensitive. So embarrass Khumalo, remove him, remove Mukwele, remove others. You suspend them. You cast doubts on their integrity in their work.
There's no crime intelligence.
There's no crime intelligence.
And if there is, they work according to your whims and ways.
100%. And the person who comes in is perhaps the one who would have been
Towed
behind
the party line, as it were.
Yes. And that's where we are. But you make up your mind and find out who's that particular person, whose interests were being served here.
It's an unfortunate situation. The one thing that I do know is, however long it takes, we will get to our promised land.
Again, I think the chats between Khan and Johnson, for me, I'd want to believe go beyond what we heard. But because Advocate Mahlapeselo, their evidence leader, the commission has terms of reference. They know what they're there for. But the message I got, or I saw, or I'm analyzing, is that Khan deliberately tried to neutralize Johnson so that he can be at the helm.
Infiltrate and operate.
Is how you put it.
Well, how else would you put it? I mean, if he's going to try,
ensuring that she can take. I mean, she can make decisions that would sort of favor,
compromise her.
Yeah,
compromise her in whatever position he thought he would be able to do so, such that he can run his agenda.
That's it.
That's always the work of a hidden hand. That's always the work of a hidden hand.
And I mean, you
need
remember
to compromise role players in the institution.
You have to. And there's an officer who came to, I think it was the now fired. I'm going through my archives. Richard Shibiri, Major General Richard Shibiri, the former head of national organized crime, very close to Sibiya as well, who was often at these events where Cap Matlala and Sibiya were at Sibiya's house. He said, some of these cartels and these criminals know that to make their way inside the justice system, they have to corrupt a cop. And that has been done before. So to infiltrate IDAC, you need to neutralize the head.
And they did.
Or to try and, whatever it may be, be on a good book. And that's what happened.
Yeah.
That's what happened. For you who have been in the legal fraternity for about 30 years, not to question some of these dockets and statements that were obtained.
Indeed. Let's leave it there. Pule Letshwiti-Jones, always great getting insights from you. You've worked exceptionally hard on this, and if you never hear it anywhere else, best believe those who need to know. You have been the face of the nation, certainly for this station, in relation to getting to the core of these issues, because you haven't missed a single day, I believe.
Yeah.
Of every sitting of the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry. So,
except when we had to go to Malawi to go speak to the other guy.
Which is all part of the enterprise, right?
Yeah, and he says he wants to be called to the commission.
And there are so many things you got out of him that are proving to be true now, So thank you, man. I really appreciate that. And I've thoroughly enjoyed working alongside you on Sundays, 5 o'clock. And I look forward to more work with you.
No, thank you.
As I explained with me, Nqaba Mabece, this was Pule Letshwiti-Jones and I engaging the testimony of former IDAC head Andrea Johnson and everything associated with that. In a word, damaging. Damaging for the institution, damaging for her at a personal level as well as at a professional level, damaging for the persons who were expendable in the process of running this mock enterprise within IDAC, damaging for the National Prosecuting Authority itself, and dare I say, damaging for the country and its fight for the rule of law, and especially the criminal justice system enterprise. Thank you so much for your time.